Concerns are growing here in Seoul as the United States is reportedly moving air defense assets stationed in South Korea out of the country for use in the conflict in the Middle East. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, head of the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thanks for coming on today. There are concerns that the U.S. may be redeploying air defense assets stationed in Korea for use in the war with Iran, right? What could this mean for South Korea's security?
Good morning. Thanks for having me again. Yes, there have been reports that the US, if not already, that very soon will start deploying both Patriot missiles and also parts of the THAAD air defense system to the Middle East. Now, the South Korean government has been very quick to reassure people that even if these deployments do happen, that South Korea still has more than enough capabilities to deter any sort of aggression from North Korea or anyone else. And we should also remember, even if the US does deploy some of these weapons and systems, this is not a complete withdrawal of the US forces. This is just a very small fraction. So there'll be more than enough US capabilities remaining in Korea to defend Korea in any case of attack. But we should also remember, for the past year, President Lee has been really pushing to regain full operational control, not only in peacetime, but also in times of conflict. So we should be very clear that South Korea is capable of deterring any attack. And we should also factor in the account that if there were some sort of aggression against South Korea, this would be a very different type of conflict. This would not be only the US and South Korea, but South Korea, as we know, is part of the NATO plus IP4 group. So if there was any sort of aggression against South Korea, we would expect support from other countries, other members of the NATO plus IP4 group. So really, overall, even if some of these redeployments do happen, South Korea, in terms of security, it's still in an incredibly strong position.
I see. And while that's happening, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs is currently in South Korea. How might Korean and U.S. officials address the situation in the Middle East?
So I think there's likely going to be several different issues that they're going to talk about. So you mentioned just before at the start about the oil and South Korea releasing these 22 million barrels of oil reserves. So definitely the economic impact and the oil crisis, this is going to be something they'll discuss. But in terms of security, we should expect that South Korea and the US are going to come out with a very united front. So South Korea will support officially any sort of redeployment of weapons. And we should point out, these would also be fairly short-term redeployments. Once the war in Iran is finished, we don't know when that's going to be, but those weapons will likely be redeployed back to Korea. So the South Koreans will fully support the US, but they'll also likely discuss certain issues like the relationship between North Korea and Iran, what potential intelligence sharing there is between North Korea and Iran. Is there any weapons technology being shared? What cooperation is happening? And also, if there was some sort of escalation, again, how would they counter that in the future?
Right. You just talked about North Korea. Could this meeting also provide an opportunity to sort of discuss bringing North Korea back to dialogue, especially since President Donald Trump is planning to travel to Beijing to meet with China's Xi Jinping next month?
Right. So President Lee, he's come into office last June, so he's been about 9 months now. He was very clear from the start that he wanted to re-engage with North Korea. He wanted to restart the dialogue. Now, so far, this has not been successful. So it's quite clear that direct attempts to have dialogue with North Korea have failed. And so basically now his option is to sort of go through relations with other countries. And what we're seeing right now, so today, for example, North Korea and China, for the first time in 6 years, they are going to reopen the rail links between the countries. So those were closed after the start of COVID. So this shows that North Korea and China have very good relations. So what the South Koreans can do is they can try and push the US when Donald Trump meets with Xi Jinping in April to try to have China encourage North Korea to come back to the table for some dialogue. But of course, there needs to be some sort of agenda. They need to try to incentivize North Korea to come back to the table. At the moment, what is the benefit for North Korea to do this? Right now, as we've seen, North Korea, it's really starting to expand its relations elsewhere. So how can South Korea really push them?
Right, and what North Korea said yesterday is that leader Kim Jong-un oversaw a cruise missile test from a naval destroyer, and this was the second test of its kind in a week, right? What might be behind this move?
So I don't think we should really be reading too much into this. Of course, this is a sign that North Korea is continuing to expand its military, continuing to develop its weapon system and improve, modernize the technology. And we've definitely seen over the past sort of few months, past year, North Korea has been focusing a lot more on its navy, on expanding its maritime capabilities. And so these tests, which, let's face it, even though we criticize North Korea a lot, they do regularly carry out these missile tests. So again, we know it's been expanding its naval capabilities. We know it tests missiles regularly. So this is just a continuation of that development. So it's significant in that clearly they are continuing to develop, but it's not something that's sort of out of the blue and completely unexpected.
I see. All right, Professor Miller, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.